I call this cycles or circles, centers, and circulation. Now, I've been working with the structure of deep space astrology for over 40 years. My good friend Charles A. Jane and I were the only people I'm aware of who were interested in the subject back in the very early 1970s. Well, of course, there was Theodore Landscheid, whose every word on the subject is worth reading. Many astrologers have asked me, what's the meaning of points like the galactic and the supergalactic centers or planes? And of course, I can rattle off their coordinates and a few other particulars. But if you are actually interested in understanding the nature of cosmic structure from an astrological point of view, try this out. See if you can get through the following. Take it slow, and you really have to think it through. I mean, I certainly did. A central idea for understanding recent cosmic research in the last 50 or 60 years is the use and the value of various astrological coordinate systems independently and in conjunction with each other, such as the geocentric, the heliocentric, the galactic-centric, or galactocentric, as each of these best representing the different levels of our experience, our psychological or spiritual experience, whatever we want to call it, because each system has a center. And the word center can mean both the same and yet something different to different individuals. Take your own center, the center of yourself, for example. The center about or around which our life appears to revolve, that's sacred to us. And it's sacred to us in its ability to reveal or communicate to us the essence, or what we could call the identity of ourselves. The center for each of us always refers inward toward our essence, to our essence. And yet the center or lifeline of one individual, may be a new car at one point in his life, or a new wife or husband, or a child at another point. At each point, the meaning of center remains inviolate, although the outward form of what you or I will take as a center, what we take for our lifeline to that center, that's constantly changing. The different kinds of center may be conveniently expressed in the various coordinate systems of astrology. In each case, the origin or center that's chosen should most correspond to the center of gravity, the kind of question or inquiry or level of questioning that's being considered. Thus, for a study of the personal differences in the circumstances and the specific terms of our life and where we live, we traditionally use the horizon coordinate system in its relationship to the familiar zodiac with its, midheaven, ascendant, houses, and so forth. On the other hand, studies of the general terms of mankind, or humankind, I guess is a better word these days, what we call mundane astrology, involve considerations from the center of the earth. So that's geocentric astrology. And this is traditional. For a study of the motion and the relation of the bodies in our entire solar system, our solar system considered as a functioning whole, then the heliocentric ecliptic system, with its origin at the sun center, that would be appropriate. In the helio-coordinate system, we can examine the archetypes of life and of consciousness, and in general, questions traditionally referred to religion, perhaps more recently also considered by some as psychological or spiritual. I call the heliocentric chart the Dharma chart. In like manner, galactocentric, supergalactocentric coordinates are appropriate for dynamical studies of the larger or more cosmic structure of our life reality. For each of us, there are moments in our lives, for some maybe even days, when our awareness is truly of, or at least in sync with, some kind of cosmic dimensions. We would agree that there are different levels of truth or reality. What is essential as the kernel of truth to one of us may appear to another as just one example among many of a larger ordering or structure, class. Yet when we each refer to our center, that which around which we revolve, we share in the idea of centers, and yet different ones among us revolve around or consider what is central or what is essential differently. I believe we can agree on that. All reference to different centers points out simply the lack of identity, or that these seemingly different levels or centers in fact form a kind of continuum, a continuing experience or identification. And this is complex, so the following hopefully will help clarify this. All of these larger systems, such as the solar system, the galaxy, and so forth, include us here on Earth, within their reaches, like a mother holds a child within her womb. We're the children, and we're the particular representatives of the Earth, but also of the solar system, and also of the galaxy and even beyond. Their nature, their identity, their self is identical with our own. In fact, we've come through this outer space, through all the time there is and has been, just to be here now, as they say, and to be ourselves. Our day-to-day consciousness, it continually circulates from more particular awareness to something that could resemble more cosmic awareness, and then back again. We do this all the time. From an astrological perspective, the exercise and use of various astrological coordinate systems, just like exercising our muscles, can serve to remind us that all reference to centers, all referral, in fact, indicates an attempt to achieve circulation, to circle or to cycle, to achieve circulation of identity and to remember, to put back together or remind ourselves of who we already are and have always been. In other words, all discovery is self-discovery, and what we call identification is in fact simple circulation. Cosmic events and cosmic structure are very consistent in most stable reference frame to which to come to know ourselves. And the use of these inclusive meta-coordinate systems is not the symbolic process that some might suggest, but the symbol, in fact, is real. We're not working with analogies, or if we are, the analogy is complete down to the specific example through which we discover the virtual process itself, which of course is just our life. As my first Dharma teacher used to explain to me, life, or God, is no beggar. Creating a symbolically true but specifically disappointing creation. such that we should have to make amends or touch up the creation or somehow, as I said, make the ends meet. The ends already meet. It's we who will change first our attitude and then gradually our entire approach to this creation. And these changes in attitude, this reorientation in approach to what is actually unchanging or everlasting in life, represent the specific areas where the exercise and use of various coordinate systems of understanding our life, that's where they become important, especially to present-day astrologers. To discover our own orientation and inclination, that we are already perfect representatives of all space and of all time, and that we're acting out in detail through our persons events of a so-called cosmic nature, events that occur in space at perhaps remote distances and even times. Supernovae and black holes are not simply some ever-distant cataclysmic events, but are rather also part of our own everyday experience acted out, in fact, by persons within the galaxy of our own experience. The goal of our study and of our inquiry into astrology is to represent, to reveal the nature of ourselves and our intimate circulation and connection and identity in the heart of the earth, heart of the sun, heart of the galaxy, heart of the supergalaxy, etc. They are all interdependent and they are all one. So in a word, if we had to sum this up, all identification is circulation, a continuing or cycle or circle. And all inquiry, all questioning, and all search can but end in the discovery of ourself, whether it's writ small in the corners of our personal struggle or writ large across the very heavens itself. Again, all self-discovery, all identification is rediscovery and simply circulation, simple circulation. I want to talk about local attraction. As we look into the sun during the course of a year and describe the qualities of those who are born into various zodiac signs, we succeed in defining not the position of the sun, but always that of the earth in relation to the sun. And as astrologers, this should be second nature to us. And it illustrates an important axiom, and that is, all inquiry into greater centers does not reveal the nature of that center in itself, but always rather reveals our relationship to that center. In other words, centers, higher centers, serve to mirror or reflect. Their nature is to reveal to us not their intrinsic nature, but always our own. Revelation of any kind is the sign of communication with greater centers or planes. Revelation not of some far-off distant entity or, quote, God, unquote, but always revelation of ourselves, of the spirit within us. In a discussion as to the qualities of the centers of the galaxy and the supergalaxy, we can understand that inquiry into the direction of the sun will reveal the nature of the earth. Inquiry into the nature of the galaxy will serve to reveal the nature of our own sun. And inquiry into the supergalaxy will serve to reveal the nature of our galaxy. So the idea presented here is that it is the very nature of higher centers to reflect and respond to more particular or local centers. Now at this point, another very significant axiom emerges in my experience, that of physical attraction Remember, attraction means to draw across or toward. And physical attraction, or what we call gravity, is primarily a local phenomenon. That's the key. For instance, we directly respond to the attraction we call gravity at the center of the Earth. Our Earth responds to the center of the Sun to the galaxy, and so on. Yet, as individuals, we're not aware of the pull of the Sun on the entire Earth. Or again, let me repeat, attraction or gravity is a sign of a local phenomenon. Think about that. This will perhaps make more sense in our practical affairs if we put it this way. A sign of our communication, and I mention this, with higher or vaster centers, or God, whatever you want to call it, is not a physical gravity or sense of graveness, or attraction, or attachment, but always an enlightenment, a release, and an accepting of the nature of the particular terms, the terminals of our existence. Knowledge of so-called inner planes exhibits itself to us through a process of reflection, a process of mirroring our own self, rather than through the presentation to us of something new or somehow something other. Mirroring means we see our essential nature. The traditional word is reflection. When we begin to reflect, our life changes. So, just to put it in other words, higher centers mirror or reveal to us, they reflect our own self back at us, and they do not exhibit in themselves a greater intrinsic attractiveness or gravity than we already have. To make this more obvious, just an example, we each meet in life individuals who have a great impact on us. Following the above rule, those who we feel a great attraction toward and who hold great power over us are only a local phenomenon. They're not really life teachers for us. True teachers affect us with their presence by making us realize our own attractiveness, our own essential nature. So in other words, inquiry into real centers reveal to us our own essential sense of attractiveness. In fact, it's the nature of centers to be non-material or non-physical by definition. Our inquiry into this realm is limited only by our fear of reluctance to see ourself in this mirror of the higher centers. And and seeing through the back of the mirror has always been a sign of initiation. Just like the Buddhists say, we need to see through the nature of the self till it's transparent beyond it. So to sum this up, greater centers mirror or reflect our own self and our nature. They reveal to us our essential identity as already part of a larger whole. And they enlighten us from our graveness, gravity, and the burden of an apparent loneliness or any sense of being separated from the whole. That's what higher centers do for us. They enlighten us. They take away our burden. So, with this in mind, I want to resume this investigation as to the nature of the galactic centers. The galactic centers at about 26 or 27 degrees Sagittarius, and the supergalactic center at about 1 or 2 degrees Libra. We can expect the galactic center to exercise considerable greater physical attraction than that of the local supergalactic center. In fact, one of the identifying features of the galactic center, at least as revealed by work and chart analysis by people, astrologers like Charles Harvey or Reinhold Eberting and others, is a certain macho-like quality, the galactic center, a sense of strength and power perhaps typified in the zeal and self-righteousness of certain extreme religious factions. Or put more simply, the tendency in the qualities of Sagittarius and Capricorn of sternness and physical action or power. Another way to put this is the great ability, the great power of the galactic center as represented when it's strongly aspected in the natal chart to move and attract others. We find this feature in the charts of great political or religious leaders who themselves possess the power to move nations to action. The galactic center often figures in these charts in the traditional astrological ways by conjunctions and other aspects to the galaxy center. We can contrast this macho-like quality found in the galaxy center to the qualities that indicate the presence of supergalactic center in our natal charts. Now here we look to the traditional qualities of Virgo and Libra, that of care, of service, reflection, and love. Perhaps the best representative of the supergalactic nature occurs in Eastern Buddhism, in their idea of compassion, and especially in the beloved figure of the Bodhisattva, a being who is literally devoted to the service of all life until ignorance vanishes in every one of us into complete realization. We don't find the supergalaxy center as physically powerful and as moving as we do our local galaxy center, the Milky Way. Here in the West, the traditional god figures, they're more fierce and they're full of fire and brimstone. That approach, rather than the endless care and service as typified in some of the Eastern traditions. In fact, only in these times that we're now living are the servile qualities associated with Virgo's sun, with that sun sign, coming to be appreciated as a power in themselves. In other words, the supergalactic center represents a non-material, essentially a passive power, like Aikido in martial arts, rather than the more active kind of power, like Judo, as seen in the galaxy center idea. Even in the Bible, it repeatedly says, quote, this came to pass, that came to pass, and so on. The passive genius, not active in the doing of things, but rather active in the undoing of things. That is, the helping things to pass from this world. This is a non-material or spiritual task in genius, equally to be valued along with the more active one who does things, or one who brings things to be in the world. So we see these two archetypes at work in the world, and in my experience, they may be conveniently studied in their local representatives, which are the galaxy center and the supergalactic centers, and then the planes and the whole spheres of each of these vast systems. Now I'm coming to the most important part of this whole presentation. It's about inclinations, and astrology is rife with inclinations. We've all heard the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, but after another manner, end quote. Now, this is familiar as an occult maxim, but it might be the perfect description of what's involved in the various astrological coordinate systems and their transformations. It's easy to communicate the concept of wheels within wheels within wheels, of larger systems containing within them smaller systems. And this has resulted in the popular idea of the chakras or planes and planets of our experience and of ourself as an ascending hierarchy of levels, each inclusive of the preceding level. Now, what's not generally appreciated, but what becomes increasingly clear when we examine the actual structure of the various cosmic systems, is not only the idea of larger systems embracing the small systems within them of levels, but that each larger system is also differently inclined to the preceding one. That's the key. It should be understood that aside from the often tedious mathematics involved in coordinate transformations, there is an accompanying philosophical or psychological adjustment to be made, a shift in view, a shift in viewpoint, a change in the approach or attitude of the subject, and we're the subject. So this concept merits our attention. There's not only an expansion in perspective when we move to a larger coordinate system, but also a reordering of our sense of direction. This is what makes it so difficult for an individual to see beyond his present dimension and get a feel for what is perhaps his inevitable future, her inevitable future. Because there exist what are called event horizons, beyond which we cannot understand how life can go on. An example of some event horizons are puberty, marriage, childbirth, and death. Those are some of the classics. We cannot see beyond our present sphere into what our future might be like in these or other dimensions because we cannot help but conceive of these events in terms of our present linear line of thought. To pass through these event horizons involves total change. We don't watch our own change because it's we who are in fact in transition or change. We are changing, so we can't watch ourselves change. Something is lost, and that was what we used to be. So the idea presented here should be obvious. The crossing of an event horizon in life involves simple reorientation on our part. Call it a change of approach or a change of attitude. The new dimension or the new sphere that we enter turns out after our adjustment to it or change to reveal our previous or past life in a new light. We see our old behavior and our old opinions differently when we're, from our new approach, our new view. And it's very difficult to communicate the difference to one who has not yet had that experience. What has changed perhaps most is our inclination. We do not want the same things we did want, or we want them in a different manner. We are no longer inclined such that we feel the way we used to. Our life now revolves around perhaps even a different center than before. In life, it used to be a bicycle, now it's a wife or a child, for instance. Many of these principles are graphically revealed through the study and exercise of the various astrological coordinate systems that I'm mentioning here. For instance, what appears in one system as isolated and singular entities that are apparently unconnected, when viewed in the perspective of another coordinate system, actually define the basic shape of the system itself. How often in our lives does some singularity appear as if it's an other or foreign entity, but later, when we've come across and experienced several of this type, they become representatives of a kind of being that was at first to us unfamiliar. Well, this same event becomes recognizable to us and gradually loses its threatening quality. I cannot recommend strongly enough that you exercise, that means you use them, these various ways or systems for understanding our universe for astrologers. And now I'm going to give you a brief list of some of the systems that are worth looking at. When you study a coordinate system like the heliocentric coordinate system or the equatorial coordinate system, Keep in mind that these systems are more than just numbers. They offer an insight into different areas of our life, and each area can be charted astrologically and interpreted. So a list of the obvious centers would be, our Earth-Moon system. That's the traditional astrology. Next would be the solar system with the center as the sun. And beyond that, we have what's called the local system, or called Gould's belt. This is a number of 10 to the 8th stars, of which our sun is one member. The local system originated, it was thought to be a minute galaxy embedded within the Milky Way, but is now considered to be an ellipsoid of 700 by 200 parsecs, with the long axis parallel to the new galactic longitudes of 160 degrees 140, and it's located in Orion's Cygnus in that spiral arm. The centroid of the local system is in Virgo at about 15 degrees 25 minutes, with nodes to the ecliptic at 10 degrees 22 minutes of Sagittarius North Node and Gemini. And the local system is inclined to the zodiac by about 66 degrees, and that's epic 1950. Next we come to the Milky Way, or local galaxy. It's estimated to contain 10 to the 11th stars, and our galaxy is a disk-like structure with a diameter of some 30,000 parsecs. And it has a central ellipsoidal nucleus of about 4,000 parsecs, and an average disk thickness of several hundred parsecs. The nodes in the center are around 26-27 degrees of Sagittarius in relation to the ecliptic, and our sun is located some 10,000 parsecs from the galaxy center. Beyond our galaxy is what's called the Local Group of Galaxies. And the local group includes about a score of member galaxies, the largest of which is the Andromeda Galaxy, and then our galaxy, and then something called M31, Messier Objects M31. And they revolve around a common center of mass, roughly in the direction of 27 degrees of the sign Aries. And last, and the largest metasystem is the Supergalaxy. And our galaxy is part of a flattened supersystem of galaxies some 40 megaparsecs in diameter that has a center at 1 degrees Libra or so, and is in the direction of the Great Virgo cluster, some 12 or 16 megaparsecs from our sun. So there are some of the different centers that we can study. And of course, let's not forget that in our own geocentric astrology, we need to study not just the zodiac, the ecliptic coordinates, but also the coordinates of our Earth, the equatorial coordinates projected into space, and then as we move around on the surface of the Earth, the horizon coordinates of azimuth and altitude. All of these are coordinate systems that look like they're very mathematical, but they also each have their own view, their own perspective, and their own empowerment. We can be empowered in each of these views. And all I can say is that it's worth any effort that you can make to know the system and to be empowered by it.